Hello, everybody. He's G and I'm D. No way.
Incorrect.
He's D and I'm G. Welcome to another edition of the GD Report. How you doing, D?
Man, you really cracked yourself up on that one.
I know I did.
Did you have to practice that one a long time to get it right?
10, 12 times, maybe 15.
Hey, I'm hanging in here. It's been a busy couple days.
Yep.
Obviously, big news, Supreme Court rulings
Yep.
all over the place.
Yeah, the country's on fire, literally, talking about
And
this stuff.
yeah, and we've got the most activist court in the history of our country.
Yeah, and it's on the side of the political spectrum that always shouts about activist judges and how they're against them.
Well, that side, as we've talked about many times, one of their classic moves is projection of what they're about to do. They project it on other people. So we could have seen this coming a mile away.
Right.
Interesting as well that for the first time that I know of in history, you can maybe try to give me some, you can beg to differ if you want, but for the first time in history, when the court has expanded rights to citizens, this is the first time in history that the court has gone backwards on those rights and taken rights away from citizens.
Well, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I pointed out the fact that the Roberts Court has basically taken every precedent that they disagree with personally, not because of the law, but personally, and they're dismantling it, but not because it's the right thing to do, not because there's basis in law to do it, but because they can, because they now have the votes to do what they've always wanted to do. And it started with the guns way back when. So for 150 years, 180 actually, the courts in this country have held that in order to carry a gun, that you needed to be part of a militia, because the amendment says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the common defense, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, this court, Roberts Court, led by Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, they've pushed to get that overturned. They started about, a few years back, and they just concluded with a case in New York where they basically said anybody can open carry anywhere. And the curious thing about that was they said that it's rooted in our nation's history. Well, everywhere in our nation's history, including what we deem to be lawless towns back in the day, like Dodge City, Kansas, had laws that said you couldn't carry guns in the city limits. So they've started with that, and now they've taken away what many perceive to be a fundamental right, which was the right to abortion. A lot of people thought they were just going to roll it back a little bit, but no, they took the opportunity. They've got the votes. They basically abolished it outright, and that's where we are now.
And it's, in the concurring opinion that Clarence Thomas issued, he went further than even just abortion and said, that basically anything founded with a 14th Amendment right to privacy should be stricken. And so he applied that to same-sex marriage. He applied it to anti-sodomy laws that just outlaw gay relationships of any kind.
Everything but interracial marriage. And I wonder why that would be.
Yeah, exactly. And also the right to have contraception.
Right.
And so, I find it galling that this court would go this far. And to your point about personal beliefs, it's clear that they're following, and you read Alito's opinion, they're following deeply held personal religious beliefs, which we had a little debate on the pregame tailgate party about the Establishment Clause. And It sure seems to me like they're trying to legislate from the bench an establishment of an official religion.
Yep.
Because they're pushing the teachings of the Catholic Church.
Yep.
And I'm all for people who want to follow the Catholic Church They have every right to follow the Catholic Church, but I shouldn't have to if I don't want to, and other
Right.
people shouldn't have to if they don't want to.
Well, and I don't want to, so I damn sure shouldn't
Absolutely.
have to.
Well, I'm just saying that it's everybody's right, and that's kind of the thing that gets me about the pro-choice position on this too, is the fact that, pro-choice says make your choice for yourself.
Right.
A woman should be able to make the choice. You hear a lot of examples where people want to hold up emotional stories about someone who had a child in a bad situation, a sexual assault, and the child grew up to be very successful. And those are heartwarming stories. But
Right.
at the end of the day, that was that woman's choice.
Well, like Tim Tebow, he's probably the best example of that. His mom was a single mom, could have had an abortion. I think he was the product of a one night stand, so his dad was never in the picture. And he turns out to be this famous athlete. Yeah, that's great. But
Great for them.
yeah, but the stories you don't hear about are the woman that got pregnant at 14 because in a night of passion she gave in and they didn't use a condom. She got pregnant and she ended up having an abortion, and then she went on to become a pillar of the community, maybe a town council member or mayor or a judge in the state or something. You don't hear about those because people aren't inclined to share those stories.
Because because the way they're castigated for making a choice.
Right.
But,
Absolutely.
I like I said, I'm all for people making the choice that's right for them, but
Right.
nobody's saying anybody ought to be forced to have an abortion. But they're damn sure saying now you're going to be forced to have a child.
Right.
And what's funny to me, it's not really funny to me. We've talked about this before with the Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation hearings and what a sham those were as far as the way the Republicans behaved and the way they tried to smear her and smear her career. We talked about the uselessness of the confirmation hearing process.
Right.
There's no need to have those anymore. Look at the way Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, even Alito all lied.
Yep.
I mean,
well,
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it like the Andrea Mitchells of the world and the people that say, "Oh, well, they gave misleading statements." No, they lied. They knew what they were going to do.
Yeah, they knew exactly what they were going to do, and you're right, they just lied. And so one of the big disappointments for me, and we talked about this on the pregame tailgate, was that for 2 months now we've known this ruling was coming, and the draft ruling and the ruling that were released were almost identical, if not identical. And so where were the Democrats? Where was Joe Biden? He held a press conference where he gave a statement. Okay, his statement should have been, here are the 5 people that we are going to install as new Supreme Court judges starting tomorrow. I mean,
they're going to have to get aggressive, and just telling people to vote is not going to be enough.
Right.
It's not a solid enough message. You got to have a plan to say, here's what we're going to do to stop it. And whether that be, I know Elizabeth Warren called for President Biden to establish abortion clinics on federal property.
Right.
And and people say, well, how are you going to do that in every state? What do where's the federal property? Well, it's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy fix when you think about it from a standpoint. There's a VA hospital in every state.
Right.
And so
there's things they could do. The problem with that is, though, as soon as Republicans take over, they'd nix it. And the way our country is, the Republicans take over now about it's not like it was, 60 years ago when it was, Democrats rule for 40 years. It's every 6 to 8 now. The government switches.
That's besides. That's a bigger issue even than even than Roe is the fact that you have got to, as the Democrats, they've got to get aggressive and they've got to fix voting rights. They got to fix, they got to fix the gerrymander. They got to fix all this stuff.
Right.
And they've known they needed to fix it, and yet they let 2 senators hold them hostage.
Yep.
and they let two senators determine, no, we're not going to do that. No, we don't really want to do it based on the financial contributions that they got from lobbyists that held
Right.
them back from doing it.
Well,
And so, they're going to have to get serious about it quickly, because unfortunately, what's going to happen if they're not serious is the voters are going to get apathetic and then go, it
right.
doesn't matter. They're going to give up.
They already are. I talk to people every day that says, I'm sick of the Republicans. I'm sick of the Democrats. We just need somebody new in there. I mean, that's what gave rise to Trump. Now, what I am hearing now is people saying, I voted for Trump and I don't want to see him back in there, but I sure don't want to see Biden. And I'm sick of Pelosi. I'm sick of Schumer. I'm sick of Mitch McConnell. I mean, yeah, there's some crazy stuff going
Well,
on.
and apathy is autocracy's best friend,
Yep, absolutely.
because that's when people don't vote, and that's when 30% of the population makes the decisions.
Yep.
So, definitely Democrats need a plan. They need, they need some new leadership at the DNC. They need to have a full strategy to be able to say, here's what we're going to do. Even if we get the 52 senators or 54 senators, here's what we guarantee we will do.
Yep. Well, yeah, they need to take a page out of Newt's book when he did the Contract for America, and they need to come out and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Give us these seats, and here's what we're going to do. And then what you got to do is do what you said you're going to do.
Yep. Absolutely. So we had that ruling this week, which obviously has, as you said, lit a fire across the country, protests in all major cities, people in the streets. We also had a couple of other rulings. We had a gun law ruling. You want to talk about that one? I mean, you alluded to it a little bit earlier when you were talking about kind of what they led up to, but it took what can you imagine that we would have said, you look at the Heller case on guns, and Antonin Scalia, former justice, would be considered a moderate these days.
Right.
Because he said, he used Heller to establish, that's the first time they established, to your point, the right for personal possession of a firearm.
Right.
It's the first time that they did it with a ruling, but he said that there are clearly can be limits on that.
Right.
And where we're headed with guns is that there's going to be no limits, because
well, yeah, that's what this ruling effectively does.
Yep.
It basically, so New York had a law that said in order for you to have a handgun outside your home, that there had to be a clear reason for you to fear for your safety. And this ruling basically says, no, we don't know any other provision in the Constitution that says anything like that. So now you don't need a reason. You can just carry a gun outside your home for any reason. Hey, I feel like going to the store and I want to strap on my AR-15 on my back. Let me head on down there. That's what this does. And it comes on the heels of two of the worst mass shootings in the nation's history. It just shows you how callous and out of touch the Supreme Court is. And it's just unconscionable that they would do that.
Yeah, as we talked about on the pregame as well, and you mentioned it here, is expanding the court to more accurately represent the country is a necessity at this point.
Yep.
And that should be it's one of those things that when it was brought up a few years ago, you didn't have that much support for it. But it's kind of like the $15 minimum wage. Remember when Bernie first brought that up, and people were like, "Oh, you're crazy. That'll kill businesses." Look, everybody's for a $15 minimum wage on the Democratic side now.
Right. Well,
It's
and even some Republicans.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. I mean, you're going to see people where it's just going to make sense to have, for 9 people, and not even 9, 6 people.
6 people made this ruling.
To make a ruling, it's going to affect over 150 million people's rights.
And if I'm not mistaken, they're all Catholic, right?
Yeah, they are all Catholic. I think Gorsuch is technically either Episcopalian or Presbyterian because he switched to that when he got married. That's his wife's religion. But he grew up in the Catholic Church. All of his training was in the Catholic Church.
Right.
So, I
So
mean,
you got 6 people, all basically one religion, and oh my gosh, what's that religion stance? Anti-abortion.
that's right.
And so they're basically forcing their religious views onto the rest of the country.
Talk about a violation
Shameful.
of talk about the violation of the Establishment Clause.
Yeah.
So, yep. So it's with Roe, and then also with the gun ruling as well. Interesting that states have a right to mandate what happens to a woman's body, but they don't have a right to mandate what happens to guns.
Right.
Then we also had another ruling where the court decided that police officers can no longer be sued if they do not give a Miranda warning. So your Miranda rights still exist under the Fifth Amendment for self-incrimination, but police officers don't have to let you know that. They don't
Yeah,
have
you
to
don't have
let
you don't
people
have
know
any
that they were-
recourse if they don't.
Yeah, it's going to make every Law and Order episode about 17 minutes shorter now.
Right.
We're not going to
Yeah.
hear them read them their rights, but it's this. So for anybody who wants to complain about an activist judge,
Right.
anybody that wants to complain about mandates in Obamacare, I mean, come on, let's get real.
Right.
But this has been, to your point about Democrats having a plan earlier. I want to go back to that because you made a really good point there. Pains me to admit that you made a good point.
Right.
But, this has been 40 years in the making.
Yep.
What happened this week? It's been a concerted effort. Trump had no idea who he was going to appoint to the Supreme Court. If he had his druthers, he probably would have appointed Judge Judy or somebody like that.
Right.
That he felt like could benefit his TV career down the road. But he was handed a list of judges from Mitch McConnell that came from the Federalist Society and said, here are the approved judges that you're going to pick.
Yep.
You're going to pick somebody from these. And they all said they're going to vote to overturn Roe. Then when they had their confirmation hearings, they said, oh, no, we would never do that.
Right. It's established law.
Precedent is precedent. And Roe's been established through its initial ruling, and it's been reestablished through Casey. And we would never vote to get rid of that. Ever,
Right.
ever. Fingers crossed, wink, wink, nod, nod. And so don't think that this was something that just happened overnight. And so Democrats better pack a lunch and better get serious about having a plan. And they're going to have to get aggressive and not keep giving an inch here and giving an inch there. I mean,
Right.
I think the other thing they should do is I think they should nix the Hyde Amendment.
Right.
Why should Republicans get to continually have the Hyde Amendment in bills saying that no federal dollars can be spent on abortion?
Right.
Why do you owe that to the other side?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I mean, even in this gun legislation that they just passed, where 14 Republicans in the Senate, joined the Democrats caved on a lot of stuff they wanted, just to get the Republicans. I would have said no. I'd have said, this is what this bill needs to be effective. And if you're not voting for it, we're going to call your ass out. We're going to tell the American people why you're not voting for it. We're going to make you look bad. It goes back to Joe Manchin where he's like, oh, I want the Senate to be like it used to be. Dude, it ain't ever going to be like it used to be. And they want it to be all congenial and everything. And, this ain't how Mitch McConnell plays ball. Learn how to play ball like Mitch McConnell plays, and you're going to be successful. Otherwise, you're just going to be, you might as well carry a pocket full of handkerchiefs because you're going to be crying a bunch of crocodile tears and lamenting the fact that you're not getting anything done.
Yep. Absolutely. So not a real uplifting podcast today. I mean, should we sing Wind Beneath My Wings or something before we go?
Yes.
I think bottom line is that it's potentially a dark time for our country. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. Well,
people
like I
do-
said in that email I sent you the other day, we're well on our way to the 1850s.
Yeah, and people need to get serious about voting. There's no doubt about it, because you know the old saying, and it's cliche. You know, vote like your life depends on it, because it does. It really does.
Yep.
I mean,
Sure
you're
does
going to
now.
have, people that we both love and know could be facing. Well, we already know women are not going to have fundamental rights anymore in a lot of states. And you live in a state that has abortion rights, and women's have an autonomy over their body. It's codified in your constitution, I believe. I know it's at least a state law. My state, the exact opposite.
Yep.
And but they're not stopping here. They want a national ban.
Yep.
They want national control over women. And it is about control. Because if it was about healthcare, or if it was about the health of the fetus, and if it was really about pro baby, there would be that whole side would be lined up for universal health care, universal prenatal care, universal pre-K. It would be all about making that child, when it was born, actually have a support system. But once it's born, they don't give a crap about it.
Nope. No, they sure don't. They don't care if it ends up in an orphanage or
being
Actually, on the-
molested or being abused.
Yep.
Or anything like that. So and Democrats have to get stronger about calling this stuff out for what it is.
Yep.
All right, man. I think we've covered a lot tonight.
Yeah.
And hope everybody's doing well out there, staying safe. And don't forget, we've got a lot of primaries going on. We'll
Yep.
probably, I would expect in the next couple weeks, we'll probably do an initial, maybe a Senate update. We'll talk about some of the Senate races, because those are going to be key going into this fall, because we've just about got nominees in every state now. Almost all the primaries have happened. There's a few more to come.
Yeah. I think on the
and then-
28th is the last day.
Yep. And then we'll do an episode talking about the House as well.
Yep.
So everybody take care. G-Man, great job. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Night, everybody.